Okay, welcome to another video. So today we're going to take a look at another distribution made for the Raspberry Pi. This time we're going to take a look at one from Manjaro and we're going to check out their Sway edition. So Sway is an extremely lightweight tiling window manager for Wayland, famous for its efficiency, screen space and keyboard controlled workflow. So basically think i3 meets Wayland. The ideal environment for text and terminal focus usage for advanced users. So I'm really quite looking forward to this one. I've been really enjoying my little run through of different distributions on the Raspberry Pi. So what I'm going to do now is flash the image to an SD card and then we're going to hop over to the Raspberry Pi. Right, so here we are on the Raspberry Pi and we've booted up off the SD card for the first time and we're using a 32GB SD card. So what we're going to do now is run through the initial setup and then we can start taking a look around. So first things first, we need to choose our keyboard layout. So as I'm of course from the UK, I'm just going to press U and then keep pressing U until we reach UK. So we're going to go U, keep going, and there we are on UK. So we're going to hit enter. And the next step is to enter our desired username. So we're just going to keep it super simple and type in Tyler. Next up, additional groups for Tyler. So I can see that we've already got will, video, storage. So I'm not going to worry about any additional groups for now and then just stick with the default ones that's already provided. Enter a full name for Tyler. So we're just going to stick with Tyler. And now we need to make a password for the Tyler user that we have just created. And confirm it. And now we need to do the same for the root password. So, and confirm it. Right, next up, we're now going to choose our time zone. So I'm going to look for Europe, London. So again, I'm just going to press E and then keep pressing E until we reach Europe, London. So we're in the Bs. So it'll be just about there. And then I'm going to hit enter. And next up, we're going to choose our locale. So I'm going to be using ENGBUTF-8. So again, we're just going to press the first character, which is going to be E, and then just keep going until we see GB. And there it is. So we're going to press OK. Now we're going to choose a host name for the system. So we're just going to call it Sway and keep things super simple. And that should be the last step. It is indeed. So we get a nice little summary so we can check that we've made any mistakes, and if everything's looking good, we can then continue and reach the desktop. Okay, so it's dumped us straight at the login screen after a fresh reboot. So we're just going to type in our username, which of course is Tyler, type in our password, and then we can start taking a look around. Right, so we've got a load of notifications popping up at the top right there, which appear to be the Manjaro news sort of applet. I probably will disable that. I'm not too keen on having sort of news updates built into my desktop or window manager. So we've got a little dialog box at the bottom left there that appears to be showing us some of the commonly used keyboard shortcuts, because of course this is going to be a keyboard driven window manager. Before we start taking a look at all of that kind of stuff though, we are going to jump into the PAMAC GUI, which I can see at the top right here, see if there's any updates, and then we can continue with the rest of the video. And just as we said that, I can notice we now have 320 available updates. So we're going to jump over to updates and we have 838.3 to download. So what I'm going to do now is just pause the video here and then come back once that's finished. Okay, so we're all up to date. It took a little bit of a while, but other than that we should be good to go. Now before we start taking a look around at the desktop and the applications, we are going to do a quick reboot because I just want to see how much RAM this uses on a fresh boot, and I think it does have HTOP installed out of the box. Okay, so we're back off a fresh reboot and we're using around about 370 MB RAM from a fresh start, which isn't too bad. And I'm going to imagine if we was to click memory, we're going to see that the MN tray is quite near the top there. So we could disable that and then bring that down a little bit as well. So we can also see that we do have a swap partition or swap file. We'll check out exactly what that is in just a moment, of 5.58 GB. So if we just quit out of this now and do a quick LSBLK, we can see how it's set up our disk or our SD card. So we have a boot partition of 213 MB, and then we have the majority of our storage for the root partition, and then we have some ZRAM, which is that swap that we just saw at 5.6 GB. Now before we continue looking at the desktop, we're just going to do a quick NeoFetch and check out the output of NeoFetch. So of course the OS is Manjaro ARM Linux Arch 64 running on the Raspberry Pi 400. So the kernel that we are using is the 5.4.83-1 Manjaro ARM kernel, and package wise we're using 753 packages, all from the native Pacman package manager. Default shell is bash version 5.1.4, and of course the window manager is Sway. Theming wise, we are using the Matcha Dark Sea, and for icons we are using Papyrus Dark Maya, but we'll check out all of the additional themes that it might have installed out of the box. So let's exit this for now. So I do believe the default modifier key for this is going to be the Alt key, but you could of course change that to the super key if you preferred in the config file. So to close this, we're not going to type in exit, we're going to go Alt or your modifier key, Shift and Q, and I do believe that should be the default close application shortcut. Now we're going to start with our top bar here, so we have a nice little time and date for the clock. We then have our Bluetooth, and we will test out Bluetooth and make sure that's all working and try and send some files to a phone on Android with Bluetooth. We then have our MN tray, which is where you're going to get news updates and things like that. Personally, I would probably remove this from your auto start unless you do like to be kept in the loop and have news bulletins delivered directly to your desktop. For me, it's a little bit much. But anyway, let's mark all of those as red and keep moving on. So here we have our active connections for our internet. So at the moment we're using a wired connection, but it has also worked with the Wi-Fi, so we could connect to any of those Wi-Fi access points as well. We then have our volume, and clicking that will open up the volume control. And I've just noticed that whenever a program is focused, like the one right here, it will then give you the title of the window in the middle of your bar there, which is pretty handy as well. So let's close that. And next up we have a few little system resource monitors. So I do believe this one's your RAM, and we are currently using 0.4 GB. And then we have one for CPU usage with all of the cores when you hover over it. And then you have your current local IP, and it will tell you the sort of device that it's using. So we're using F0 for Ethernet. And then to the left now we have the sort of workspaces or virtual desktops, whatever you like to call them. Now we're currently on 1, but it should go all the way up to 10. So let's try that now. It does indeed. So let's go back to the first workspace. Now we appear to be missing that little dialogue that we had in the bottom left, but I quickly sort of watched some of the playback that we've already recorded, and I know to get it back we press the modifier key, Shift, and then we also press the key for the question mark, and then it will pop back up and we can press escape to close it. So let's have a look at some of the commonly used keyboard shortcuts. So of course our default modifier is Alt. So for a new terminal it's going to be Mod Enter, so this should be pretty much transferable. If you're coming from i3 you should kind of feel quite at home here. Application launcher is Mod D. Let's see what our application launcher is like. Okay, cool, nice. So it's opening up in the middle of the screen, and we have a little search bar at the top there, but we'll check that out in just a moment as well. And then we have the command runner, which is Mod Shift and D. And again, that's going to open up in the middle of the screen for you to run any commands. And then we're going to close that one off using escape, open that back up. And then we have the window switcher, which is Mod Control D, and then we can enter resize mode where we can sort of move the size of the tiled windows using Mod R again, so you should be pretty much used to this if you're coming from i3. Then we can enter screenshot mode, which is going to use the modifier key, so Alt, Shift and S. Let's give that a go now. Okay, so it's going to open up in your top bar here at the left and give you the options for full screen, window or region. Let's first test it out with full screen, so we're going to press F, and now that's copied a screenshot. We've got a notification, screen copied to buffer, and now we're going to try it with window. So we're going to have to open up a window, so let's open up a terminal first. Let's close that off for now, and now let's enter that, and then we're going to press W, and that hasn't managed to take that screenshot, so we won't worry about that one for the moment. Let's now see if it will work with the region. So again, we're going to press Shift, Alt and the S key, and now we're going to press R. So region appears to be working, so let's just copy this little bit here, and that has worked. So that's now all copied to the buffer. So what we're going to do is see if that is actually in our folder for the pictures. So again, we're going to open up our application launcher using the modifier key and D, and this time we're going to look for our file manager. I'm not sure what it is on here, so we're just going to type in file, and it is Funar, the file manager. We'll go through the other applications in just a moment. So we're in our home folder right now. Let's go into pictures. So it hasn't copied it there, so I'm not too sure where it has copied it, but we'll check that out in just a moment as well. Okay, so it's just dawned on me that by buffer it's going to be in your clipboard. So what we've gone and done is just quickly installed GIMP using Pacman, and we're going to jump into another workspace and we're going to do that screenshot again. So we're going to do a full screen screenshot, and now we're going to open up GIMP using the application launcher, and then we're going to use Control V to then copy that screenshot into that and then see if it all works as it should. So we're going to press Ctrl V and it should copy over that entire screenshot. And there it is. So screenshotting is all working absolutely fine. Okay, so now that we've checked out the screenshot mode, we're now going to try it out with recording mode. And I've also noticed in this little dialog at the bottom left here, when you move through things and hit enter on something, it's then going to sort of organize that dialog based on recently used. So for example, if we hit enter on new terminal and then opens it up again, that will now appear on the top of that list. So what we're now going to do is check out the recording mode, which is going to use the modifier key Shift and R, which of course by default on Manjaro Sway on the Pi is going to be the Alt key. So we're going to press Alt, Shift and R. So we're going to do that now. Okay, so it's again going to open up the options in the top left in your top bar, and we can do screen using W, we can do screen and mic using Shift and W, that's pretty cool. We can do region, and we can do region and mic. I quite like this, how it's all built into the actual window manager itself. I think this is pretty cool. So we're going to test it out pressing a W. So I do believe that we are now recording. Let's just wiggle the mouse around a little bit. Now I'm going to imagine hitting the escape key for the exit will then stop all of the recording. So let's try that now. So we're going to press escape. And now we're going to jump into the Funar file manager using the application launcher. And we're going to jump straight into the videos folder. And there it is. So we're going to test out the media playback now using the MPV media player. And then at some point in this video, we'll also test out YouTube playback on Firefox. So let's open this one up, and there we go. So it's opened it up in the right hand side of the screen, and as you can see the mouse is wiggling, so the screen recording is working out of the box, and I think that's pretty cool actually. I'm quite impressed with that. Okay, right, let's keep going with these applications now. So now we're going to, I think that was all of the screen, sort of all of the shortcuts there. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So of course we've got the command runner, Windows switcher. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go through the applications that are installed out of the box, bearing in mind I did install GIMP myself. So of course Funar is the default file manager. We have LibreOffice Impress, so I'm going to imagine we have the whole LibreOffice suite, and I'm also going to imagine it is going to be the fresh package, which means you get the most up-to-date version, but we'll check that out as well with Writer. We also have Qt5 settings, your ZeroConf browser, and now we're at LibreOffice Writer. So we're going to open this one up. And it looks like the newer loading screen for LibreOffice, so we're going to be on version 7.0.4.2. We'll double check that in just a minute. It's going to take a couple more seconds than what you'd expect, because of course we are running off an SD card. Okay, so we're going to go straight to Help and About. And there we go. So we are on version 7.4.2. And again, you'll have the name of the window in the central part of your top bar there. Okay, so let's test this out and see if we have dictionary support enabled out of the box for auto correction. It doesn't appear that we do, so what you'd probably want to do is download the dictionary for your language for the auto spell check to actually work, and then give you an underlined squiggle when something's not spelt correctly. While we've got this window open though, we are going to open up a terminal and see how it organises the splitting. So pretty standard stuff. There doesn't appear to be any gaps out of the box, but I'm sure we can make that happen in the config file. So now what we're going to do is see if the default shortcut for moving this across different workspaces is what I'm expecting it to be, which is going to be the modifier key, which again is Alt, Shift, and then the number that you want to move it to. So we're going to go for workspace 2, and we're going to move this terminal window into workspace 2. There we go. So now if we go into number 2, as you can see, there is that window that we have just moved over. Perfect. Right, let's close both of these ones off now, and we don't need to save that document. Brilliant. Right, let's keep going with the application launcher, and as well as the way that the shortcut dialog reorganizes things in order of recently used, the application launcher appears to do the same kind of thing, because as you can see, LibreOffice has now moved further up the list. So we have Termite the terminal, we have NeoVim, and we have Foliate. I think this is kind of like a text editor or something. I've not really ever used it. So no books yet, so it's a bit more than a text editor it appears. So let's go to browse catalogs. Do we have any? So it does ebooks and all sorts. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Let's close that off for now and keep going. And as you can see, that has now moved further up the list. So we also have the color picker. We have add or remove software, which is going to be your PAMAC GUI, which is where you are going to be installing most of your applications when you're not doing it via the terminal. And of course, if you wanted to, you can go into the preferences and then enable the AUR or the Arch user repository. like so. So we can just jump straight into the AUR, and then we can check that box, and then we can install packages from the AUR. But for now, I'm not really too worried about that. So let's keep going, and of course that has now moved to near the top of the list. So what else have we got? We have bulk rename, we have about XFCE, we have the Manjaro settings manager, which is you can do things like your locale, user accounts, time and date, and your keyboard settings, as well as your language pack. Well, let's keep going. So is there anything else here I want to take a look at? So customize look and feel. Let's see what the actual theming is installed out of the box. So we have clear looks, we have crux, industrial, and then we have all of the matcha sort of variations, and the default is of course dark sea, and we have mist, Rayleigh, and Redmond. Now in icon theming, we are using the Papyrus Dark Maya icon pack, and it appears it has most of the other Papyrus sort of variations, as well as Adwaita. And we're going to go into cursors, because I've just noticed when we're on a window we're using the kind of breeze icon, but then we move off of a window, it goes into a more sort of just black cursor, which is quite interesting. Okay, well, let's keep going. So I think that's pretty much most of what we're going to look at there. So we do also have the Thunderbird email client for desktop email. I'll probably uninstall that. I'm trying to sort of move away from desktop email clients. We have HTOP, Pulse Audio for volume control. We have the Quantum theming manager. LibreOffice Draw, we have Firewall. Let's open up Firewall and see what that looks like for Firewall D. And there we go. So here's where you can configure your firewall there with a nice little GUI. So it's trying to connect, but we're not going to wait for it, and we're just going to close that and continue with the rest of the applications. So we have Chromium Widevine. I'm not too sure what this is. I don't think I've ever used this before. Missing image. Please run the install Chromium Widevine script. Now I think when we opened up the command runner, we had an option to actually do that, didn't we? Let's try that again. So the command runner is mod shift and D. Let's give that a go. And there we go. So if we wanted to install that there, it's got the SH file right there ready to go. And Firefox is your default web browser. We have the VNC server browsers and Zafura, which I do believe is like a relatively lightweight document viewer. We then have WDI displays and the V4L2 test utilities, and we'll also have the capture utilities. We have the Gparted partition manager, and then we have the MPV media player, which is what we used to play that screen recording, and it all worked out of the box. We then have Bluetooth adapters, managed printing, and Ranger. So Ranger is a terminal based file manager, so we can open up any terminal anywhere we want, type in Ranger, and then that's going to load a nice little terminal based file manager, and you can go through it and do whatever you like. Let's keep going. So I don't think there's too much additional stuff I really want to take a look at in the applications. So we've got Ranger, Archive Manager, MN Tray, and then Bluetooth Manager. Okay, cool. So what I want to do now is test out the Bluetooth and make sure that's all working out of the box. Then we'll do a bit of media playback on YouTube and see if that's all working as it should at full HD. And then we'll check out a few more things, and then we'll wrap it up there. So what we're going to do is close that off for now. We're going to go into the Bluetooth Manager here, and we're going to open up devices. So I've got an old Samsung Galaxy S9 by my hand, and let's just make sure Bluetooth is on. And now we're going to see if we can search for this Bluetooth device. So it's picked up a few things there for miscellaneous, but let's just let it get a bit more there, and it should find, so it's found the LG TV. Is it going to find the Galaxy S9 though? I don't think it has. So what I'm going to do is just pause the video for the moment and make sure it's all set to discoverable, and we'll try that again. Okay, and there it is. So what we're going to do is click on that, and we're going to do a right click, and we're going to press connect. Now that should pop up with a little dialogue there, and it should also come through on the phone, which it has. Do you want to pair with Sway? I do indeed. And now it should go through and pair it, and we should be able to send files back and forth, and we'll give that a go. Okay, so I think it's connected. So what we're going to do is right click and go to send file. So that should open up our file manager, and I've took a quick screenshot, and we're going to try and test that out now and see if that can send that across over to the phone. And I do believe it has, so I'm going to accept that on the phone. And I think that it's all working as it should, and it is now receiving that image. And we'll check that out in just a moment, and I'll put a little confirmation over on the screen if it works or not. Okay, so that was pretty cool that all seems to have worked out of the box. We'll know more in just a moment. Now what I want to do is do some YouTube playback via Firefox, but what we're going to do is test out the screen, sort of keyboard shortcuts for the volume, and see if that all works out of the box, and make sure we can mute it. So I'm going to press FM for my function key and then the mute key. and that is working out of the box, as well as volume up and down, and you can see it changing in the top bar there. So let's just mute that for now, and now we're going to open up Firefox. So we're going to go straight to our application launcher, type in Firefox, and we're going to go to my YouTube channel, and we'll try and play back a video there and see if playback is nice and smooth. So again, it's going to take a few seconds to actually load Firefox because it's quite a large program and everything is running off an SD. Okay, so here we are on the channel here. It does also appear that we have an ad block installed out of the box in the extensions, and let's just quickly agree to that. And let's try it with this Twister video as we are on the Raspberry Pi, and this is the last Raspberry Pi video that we did. So it's automatically playing back in 480 and it appears quite smooth. I don't see any sort of jitteriness, so what we're going to do is test it out with full HD now. So we're going to go to 1080p HD, and let's see if that plays it back without any sort of stuttering. Let's just skip it in a bit. So it appears to be playing back pretty much perfectly. I don't see it skipping any frames or jittering, and I'm actually quite impressed with that. I've had some struggles with YouTube playback here and there on different distributions on the Pi, but for the most part I can live with that. Let's just see it in full screen. I'm pretty sure we just did that, YouTube. Let's try it again in full screen now, and then let's just press play once more. And there we go. So YouTube playback at 1080p on the Raspberry Pi 400 is working absolutely fine. Okay, so to fine tune your window manager and to make any changes apart from what you can see on the default, you're going to be editing config files much like you would on i3. Now I'm not too sure where Sway stores its config file, so we're going to take a stab in the dark and guess it's in our .config folder. So we're going to press Ctrl H in our home folder to expose our hidden files in Funal Manager. And there's nothing here that appears to say Sway, so we're going to jump straight into .config, and while we're in here we'll also see what else we've got. So we have our auto start folder, a few applications, Cavantum, etc., and there is Sway, and next to it is Ranger, and then we also have Waybar, wlogout, Wofi and XFCE4. So we're going to jump into the Sway folder, and here is the config file where you are going to be fine tuning things about your window manager. Now I'm not too sure, we have a GUI text editor installed out of the box, so I'm not sure what's going to happen when we double click this file, but we're going to find out now. Okay, we have something. So I think that's the Foliate package. Yes it is. So it's opened that up in Foliate, so you might want to install a GUI text editor, but of course we do have NeoVim installed out of the box, so we could just open up a terminal and go straight to our .config home folder like so, and then we could type in Sway, and now that we're in here, if you do an ls, there is that config file, so we could just go nvim config, and then you can make any changes there that you find necessary. Now to wrap things up, I do want to check out the lock screen, so we'll do that and then we'll give some final thoughts on Manjaro Sway towards the end. Okay, so here we are, our lock screen. Don't be too concerned that all you're staring at is a black screen, because as soon as you start hitting any keys, you'll then get a little bit of a visual feedback about what's going on. So pressing some keys, you'll notice you'll get a little pop-up visual display there letting you know that some keys have been hit. Now if we press enter, we've purposely done the wrong password, and it will verify it, tell you it's wrong, and then go back, clear that, and then we can enter the correct password, let it verify, and then we are back at the desktop. So I think I'm going to wrap my final thoughts up there, but all in all I've really enjoyed my time checking this out on the Raspberry Pi. I think this might be the favourite one I've checked out so far. And if you're looking for a nice lightweight tiling window manager for your Raspberry Pi, you should definitely give Manjaro Sway a look. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and join the Discord. There's a link in the description. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.